Right, I'm going to quickly talk through this book in terms of the answers that you can use to help you revise, okay? There's just the checklist that these are the things that we've been taught over the past couple of lessons. You can use this then to help you revise. What did you know before? What did you know after we taught? And then in terms of thinking about your revision, what things do you already know and know that you'll be able to answer questions on? And what things do you maybe need to come ask me for or do a little bit more revision about? We don't need to look at that, do we? Here's just then a bunch of keywords. You've got it the right way around in your booklet, and some revision tips and knowledge organisers. Again, they are much nicer printed in your books. Bit more of knowledge organisers. Again, everything you need to know about this topic is in this booklet. Then I have filled in the review sheet for you. Okay, it hasn't copied great, okay, but I will talk through it. So draw and name the first four alcohols. Methanol's got 1 carbon, ethanol's got 2, propanol's got 3, butanol's got 4. Describe how ethanol could be made, either by fermentation of glucose using yeast catalyst or by hydration of ethene using steam, like adding water. Okay, advantages of fermentation, a renewable source of energy. You just need to grow the glucose from sugar cane, stuff like that. But it's slow and it's a batch process. You have to stop it, distill the ethanol out. Okay, it also releases CO2 as a byproduct. Okay, you need to know the conditions: 80 degrees, yeast catalyst, no oxygen. In terms of hydration, then, fast, only ethanol is made. It's expensive, but the ethanol, which comes from ethene, has to come from crude oil and has to come from cracking, okay? How do you test for alcohols? Use an acidified potassium dichromate, orange to green. Draw the mechanism and describe what happens when propanol is oxidized, okay? That's essentially adding oxygen, okay? We use potassium dichromate to do it, and it turns into a carboxylic acid. That is the carboxylic acid functional group there, okay? Explain the problems associated with alcohol. Economic kind of problems, NHS, thinking about crowding in terms of Friday and Saturday night in A&E, domestic violence, all them things have an added up cost to the NHS. Does bring in a lot of tax though, so it is good in that way that the government can tax and use it for other things, and jobs in terms of bars and stuff like that. Problems with your health then: cancer, liver disease can cause depression. Social problems then: violence and property damage. Okay, give the use of ethanol. The big use of ethanol then is alcoholic drinks, used as a solvent, and it can also be used as a fuel. Then looking at what the problems with using ethanol as fuel are. Advantages: it's renewable. Again, you could use fermentation, I guess, and grow sugar canes. Uses sugar grown in many countries. However, disadvantages: it requires sunny weather and there's a large demand for land. Okay, explain how we know this is ethanol. We've got the peaks, and you get the chart in your exam, and that represents the OH group, which is on ethanol. Then there's some quick fire questions for you to test yourself on, and the answers. They're good to make revision cards with. And then here are the questions. So the first one is kind of like a naming salts question. Okay, so you've got one of these charts that we practiced loads in lessons. Name the white solid A. So I know it's going to be sodium because it's sodium ethanoate solution, and it's got carbon dioxide, so it's going to be sodium carbonate. Name the colour solution B. So it's magnesium plus ethanoic acid. Okay, you don't need to know what the answer is because it gives you it there. So it's going to be magnesium ethanoate. Okay, dilute ethanoic acid reacts with magnesium less vigorously than dilute sulfuric acid of equal concentration. The reason for that is there's less H plus ions in the same volume, also less splitting, we called it, or dissociation. Okay, in the sulfuric acid H2SO4 will split completely into H plus ions and SO4 2 minus, whereas CH3COOH would split into CH3COO minus plus H plus. Okay, so that's a complete split. You'd have to balance that out because that's going to be 2, whereas this is going to be a partial split, so partial dissociation. Ethanoic acid is formed when an alcoholic drink such as wine is left exposed to the air. That's oxidation, thinking about what's in the air. Give the name of the compound in wine which turns into ethanoic acid. That's ethanol. Ethanol is used as a fuel. It can be made by fermentation of sugars using yeast. The following graph shows the rate of fermentation using different sugars at 25 degrees. Identify the best sugar for producing ethanol and give your reason. Glucose, because it had the highest rate of fermentation at 25 degrees. Okay. Now, with this question, you could have gone either way. I picked yes, and I picked some reasons from here which were positives. But if you wanted to go in the opposite direction, okay, I just realised I did that. Okay, you could have then picked these 4 and spoke about them instead. So it's up to you. If you wrote no, you needed to comment on the 4 that I put X's next to. If you picked yes, then you need to comment on the 2 I put ticks next to. Complete the word equation for the complete combustion. Thinking about combustion, that's in 5.5 as well. Complete combustion will give you water plus carbon dioxide. Okay, they gave you the oxygen and the ethanol. Okay, so that's kind of linking combustion, which we did with the whole year group. So then it goes on to say that ethanol can be formed from glucose by a process of fermentation using yeast. Give 2 conditions, 80 degrees and no oxygen, or the absence of oxygen. Balance the equation. You can see my workings down here. Okay. Okay. Name the separation method used to recover the yeast. You'd filter the yeast out, obtain ethanol from mixture. That's distillation, which is year 10 work. Okay. Give 1 advantage of using ethanol rather than petrol to fuel cars. It's carbon neutral, so it takes in CO2 to grow. It does release CO2, but the amount of carbon dioxide taken in to grow is the same as given out. Okay, nice easy question then. Draw in methane, gave you the answer. Again, all you had to do was count the carbons and the hydrogens. Octane contains 8 carbons. Give the molecular formula for octane. Okay, remember to use that CN plus H2N plus 2. Okay, and that gives you C8 plus H18. So you can just use that equation there to work it out then. Moving on then to the next part of the question. Name compound that was made from glucose plus yeast would be ethanol. Give the structural form of ethanol, which would be C, because it's got 2 carbons. Give 1 everyday use of compound X in beer or in alcoholic drinks. Suggest why the circle value is considered to be anomalous. If you look at the 2 other values, 38 and 40, they're very close. 32 is much lower, so results much lower than the other 2. Okay. Then you had to plot the mean data with the temperature and plot a graph. Okay, state what conclusions can be drawn from the graph. Optimum temperature for fermentation is 40 degrees, that's where the top is. Rate of fermentation increases till this point. After 40 degrees it is too warm, fermentation decreases. Okay, write a word equation for the reaction taking place. Glucose goes to ethanol plus carbon dioxide. Yeast produces a catalyst that allows this reaction to take place. Name this type of catalyst. Catalase. Okay, that's unlikely to come up, that question. Give the name taken for the process taking place. So you can see these questions are all very similar. Fermentation. Yeast is needed for the process to occur. Give the reason why yeast is written in the above equation. Yeast is the catalyst, that's why it's written by there. Choose from the box. So it's 80 degrees, so I would have gone with 70 as that's the closest one. So this is what distillation looks like, and it said about unreacted glucose and ethanol. The apparatus would be used to separate ethanol. Give the name of the process which separates ethanol from the solution. That would be distillation. Okay. Explain how this process separates ethanol from the solutions based on boiling points. So ethanol will boil at about 78 degrees. So that's why you've got a little thermometer there saying 80 degrees. It will turn into a gas. So it will turn into a gas here, bubble up, and then it will be able to go into this little bit of apparatus here, which is called a condenser. This has got cold water flowing through it. So the cold water will turn that gas back into a liquid, and then you'll be able to collect the pure ethanol. Give 1 antisocial behaviour caused by excess use of alcohol, fighting, domestic violence, things like that. Then we've done this experiment the end of last year. Okay, data collected, initial temperature, final temperature, and temperature change, and then using the equation you can work out the energy change. Okay, so mass of water. If you go back, you would have been able to see the mass of water as 100, 4.2 was the value given, and the temperature change was 30 for butanol. Okay, do not use that 1 gram because it's asking for the mass of water. That's the mass of butanol, so it's 100. Okay, apart from 1 gram of each alcohol, 100 grams of water, give another step that should be kept the same, distance the spirit burner and the beaker. Okay, compare the experimental and theoretical values, give one main reason for the difference. Theoretical values are much higher, likely because in the experiment one, heat is lost to the surroundings, lack of insulation. Some people are opposed to large-scale use of bioethanol as a fuel. Describe briefly why someone would take this view. Requires a lot of land, takes away from habitat and food sources, still releases CO2, so can contribute to global warming. So there's 2 reasons as to why people are against it. And then that is the end. Okay, so make sure that you have a go at this and bring it back in when you need to.